Welcome to News9 Mediaverse, and you are watching On Point with me. The government has decided to revoke, as per the reports, the free movement regime between India and Myanmar. The FMR, as the free movement regime is known, allowed for a free movement of people from both sides of the border without restrictions. FMR also created a number of issues, including undocumented immigrants, refugees, influx of drugs, arms smuggling, and increase in insurgency. What was meant to be people-to-people contact turned into a headache for various state governments. Manipur Chief Minister Biren Singh had blamed ethnic violence in Manipur and cross-border insurgency and urged the central government to end the FMR. What will be the implication of ending the FMR on the northeastern border and India's Act East policy? Will ending the FMR solve the ethnic conflicts in Manipur, reduce the issue of influx of immigrants in Mizoram? What will it do? Or will it create more tension in the tribal areas as ethnicity overlap all along the border? So before I take you to the subject matters expert, let me take you through some very important details. What is FMR? How long is the border? How is it going to affect us? So first of all, let me show you the map and the talking points. India and Myanmar share an unfenced border, and this is the map. So this entire border is unfenced. In fact, what we have here is line of actual control with China. This is the Myanmar border. So this whole area is LAC. Myanmar starts from here. So this entire border becomes the unfenced. Couple of areas, this area jets into Myanmar. So this is also Myanmar border. In fact, it starts from here. The Chinese border is somewhere here. It starts from here, the Chinese border. The Kibutu sector is here. But then this entire area is unmanned. Now, with this, the complicated issue is that there is a civil war which is going on here. There is a civil war. And because of civil war, you have immigration here, you have refugees coming here, and all these areas, even Lushai Hills, as we know, Chinkuki areas, they overlap. So, there are intermarriages. And that is one issue which is stoking a lot of violence in Manipur, because people feel that, as an ethnicity, you can't change the demographic profile. Because ultimately, when India became independent, the majorities were there. So today, if those majorities have become contested minorities, then it is a real issue. That's one. Let's play the other map. Yes. So this border is unfenced. It's like this. You can just cross over. I have done that. You can cross over, you can take one permit, you can go to Myanmar, you can have your food there. It's 1,643 kilometers long. It's not a small land. Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram. It's huge, mountainous. Citizens on the both sides share ethnic ties. Nagas, Mizos. First agreement was in 1970, it was revised in 2016. It's part of the greater Indian policy to actually interact with the eastern borders. It's easier for them to go to Chittagong Bazaar than go to Calcutta port. But then the influx started. So the whole desire to integrate people in the eastern sector, which is an Act East Asia policy, is now in danger because of the problems in Myanmar. 40,000 refugees in Mizoram, 4,000 in Manipur, and we have not accounted for the foreign mercenaries which have become active. Now, there is an issue also. India has a colonial past. So, when the Britishers drew the line, they drew a line on empty spaces. So, the communities were divided. That's one. Now, what is free movement regime? FMR was implemented in 2018 as part of the government's Act East policy. What is Act East policy? Integrate India with the entire eastern border, BIMSTEC, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, which is Myanmar. Allow the road transport. Now, you could just travel 16 kilometers, as I was saying. Just pass, go, shop, come back, stay there for 2 weeks. But now, it will not be possible. With this, residents could cross over a border with using the border pass with a year's validity. Imagine, you don't need to go to urban center to get your visa. You have a border pass. Only thing you need to do is just speak to the border guard. He gets you the pass and you go. And there is no checking also. I have covered that, at least the More part. It's very difficult. You just cross and then you have expat populations. You have Tamils who during the time of World War II were used by the colonial powers to fight in various theatres. They have settled there. Now Assam Rifle is responsible for guarding the border. FMR facilitates people-to-people contact, trade and business. We have an important Kaladan project. Important. Now Kaladan project is very important to us. It was as important as Chabahar. But what is happening? Illegal immigrants. You have Rohingya colonies in Jammu. Arms and drug smuggling along the border. Refugee influx after military coup in Myanmar. Insurgent groups evade the law and flee to Myanmar. This is one big issue. You have a problem in Myanmar, you go to India. Even the army who is fighting the insurgents there, they come to India to save their own life. Then we have to drop them back there. Now, what is the impact of it? The impact of it is ethnic issue, demographic issue, tension, violence. This was suspended during COVID, and Biren Singh had been talking about it openly that this needs to be revisited, relooked. He said this in September 2023, and it has been reported in various newspapers also. Now, Manipur CM has blamed FMR for ethnic clashes because he feels that people have been able to easily cross into Manipur, cause mayhem, and leave. Now, smart fencing. Now, the idea of smart fencing and what it is, I will not today go into the detail because the geostrategic issue is far more important. But smart fencing is that you don't fence the entire border. You fence where you think that the infiltration will happen. So that is called smart fencing. It's not like you draw a line like this. It's not Pakistan border. It's smart fencing. Surveillance, fenced ravines, the plain areas, intensely patrolled mountains. Now, BRO will construct the smart fence in Manipur, Myanmar. India has a fence. We have a fence in LOC. Our border with Pakistan is fenced. The drone survey is complete, but the issue is that the Mizoram is not, despite the pilot project and the biometrics being done, it's not letting the other refugees who are there, their biometrics to be completed. So now this is broadly the big picture. Now today, in my debate, I will be joined by Professor Bhagat Oinam, Chairperson, Special Center for the Study of Northeast India, Lieutenant General Dr. Kansam Himala Singh, Paujal Chauba, Senior Journalist, and Professor Harshvi Pant. And in studio, I am joined by my input editor, Brijesh. Brijesh, this is not a small decision by the government which has been reported in newspapers to do away with FMR.
I think it's a big decision. I mean, we have been, the news broke out and, it's a big decision, irrespective of which way you look at it. My only concern is that, is this the panacea for which will solve the problem which is going on in the state of Manipur? Is this one step which solves the problem which is the ethnic conflict which is going on in Manipur? It may stop infiltration. I'm not saying that, and I'm not an authority there to say that it will stop all the infiltration. And infiltration is the only problem which is plaguing as the fight between the two ethnicities going on. But will it also help the government recover thousands of weapons, weapons which have been looted and is circulation on the ground? Or is it, aren't we looking at one picture, just blaming that, that since it is an unmanned, it's an unfenced border, it is the reason why what we are facing inside the state of Manipur.
I'm joined by General Kansam Himala Singh. A very warm welcome to you for joining me on my show On Point.
Thank you.
How do you see this decision of the government which has been reported today to do away with this free movement regime? And do you think that the smart fencing is a real solution to the problem which Manipur is facing or which the Mizoram has faced in terms of refugee influx, opium, illegal migration, demographic change?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. First of all, I am totally in agreement with this. Rather, I would say that it has been a bit too delayed. India as a nation has to have a proper boundary. And we have not had a proper boundary border management since 1947. That is the status. And from the angle of national security, regional security, I strongly believe that doing away with the FMR is one of the steps to which should have been taken a long time ago, and I have been batting for it since the time, at least last about 8 years, I can say, with various authorities that I have interacted with. It is a very, very important step right now. It need not necessarily solve the issues in Mizoram, Manipur, which is happening right now, but from the angle of national security, it is extremely important. You mentioned two things. I would like to flag two things about what you mentioned. You said about ethnic ties. Which border of India does not have ethnic ties? Look at Arunachal Pradesh, look at UP, Bihar, look at Jammu and Kashmir. Every border has got ethnic ties. And it must be ensured that borders, and then their borders are respected and they are managed well. From that angle, I totally support this. And another factor, you spoke about, the British drew the line. Entire our Indian, as we understand today, has been drawn by the British period. So there is nothing special about our border here. So therefore, therefore, I am in agreement with this.
Okay.
However, what you mentioned about whether this border fencing will be of help. Yes, I agree that many agencies and many groups have opposed this because of their ignorance, I suppose. We have to be very firm as a nation, as a powerful country, and it has nothing to do with Act East policy and FMR. And whether the fencing will do the job.
Okay.
Is the next question you put.
Okay.
Is that is not going.
General, I also have a professor. General, I'll come to you. I also have Professor Oinam Bhagat with me. I need to go to him. Please stay with me. Professor Bhagat, there are a lot of issues around it. One is the issue of Bangladesh. Even the fencing didn't work. Do you think that fencing in these terrains work? I mean to say, we are not fence experts per se, sir, but then we have an experience of the fence, the LOC fence, the Bangladesh fence, and now we are talking about a smart fence in next 4.5 years or complete fencing for 4.5 years.
See, I am totally in agreement with General Saab that even if it is not foolproof, somehow it is going to help in a large way. Though I have my own apprehension about what you called a smart fencing. Those miscreants who are likely to create havoc will in any case will come within this. But one thing that is politically to be noted is that once you fence it, and then there is an issue of illegal and legal migrants that are going to be checked. Otherwise, your FMR somehow legally allows you people from both ends to move 16 kilometers this way or that way. So to that extent, people's moving in group will be checked, and the settling of the villages, new villages coming, that will be checked with this end of FMR and also this smart fencing. To that extent, it is going to be helpful. Second point I would like to speak about is that these miscreants with arms who had been sneaking in and out of this, they are somehow getting support from the ordinary villagers. So once you check this, the movement, then they will have lesser support in terms of, giving shelter, getting shelter from these people. So hopefully this will certainly be of some use. And thirdly, there are certain groups of people, which General Saab said, are going to refuse or going to protest against. And you can well imagine and also understand that who are these people who are going to challenge this FMR. The people who are ethnically affiliated, who has affinity from both this side of the border, they would like the people from Myanmar to come in And that is, as Kartikeya, you have said, change in shift in demography. And change in demography means slowly they will be naturalized and they are getting voting rights. And demography change means democratic electoral politics in
Professor,
effect.
Professor, I
Yeah.
let you complete the argument. I let you complete the argument because I completely agree with you that the relationship of the majorities or the idea of majorities should not be rebuked, because ultimately when the nation state was born, you had those majorities, you had those minorities, and if the illegal infiltration changes it, it also impacts the social, I would say, social peace, social structure of the society. So it's not a small thing when you say those illegal villages have come up, because ultimately you challenge the I would say the original idea of the concept of what the state should be, and there is nothing, and it's not a nativist argument I'm giving. It's about the way populations receive and behave with each other. It's time for a short break. I'll come back to you. I'll be joined by other guests, because the issue here at hand is, one, Act East policy. Second, can the border work? And third, will it affect India's capacity to integrate itself with the eastern sectors, or will it just serve the strategic purpose for which this dismantling is being envisaged for? Time for a short break.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है मनी9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
I am also joined by a senior journalist who's joined me live from Manipur, Mr. Paujal Chauba. Professor Bhagat spoke on multiple issues, but one thing is very important, that the immigration also impacted the demographic profile. Your thoughts?
See, there is a whole big bone of contention here right now in this tumultuous times here in Manipur, because as you're well aware, there is a big conflict situation between two communities. And one side, where the Chin Kuki Mizo area, especially on the Chushanpur side and the Fairjol, and right now there's a lot of shooting, like 5-6 persons were shot, police commandos, BSF. There's heavy attacks at the border area. And on the same route, the forces are also divided. If you see, like on this Brotherhood Alliance, the NUZ, the PDF, they control certain sections, the San area, the Karen area, the Burman area. Others, they have got their own areas by the junta. So this has obviously effect on the border areas. As you for a couple of weeks back, a week back, like 5,000, I think 4,000, 5,000 refugees came to Manipur, and the latest was like around nearly 700 to 1,000 of them on the eastern side of Kamjong border, which we also reported. So there is also a humanitarian crisis there. And at the same time, there's also illegal influx. But I agree that there should be a proper border fencing. But I am also a little bit skeptical on the 400-kilometer approximate border that we have with Myanmar, Manipur and Myanmar. So how smart will the smart fencing be? What will be the reciprocation from the Myanmar side? Because, of course, people say that we have all these affinities and this, what do you say, communities like Naga, Kukis, which are like, they have in villages which are just like a one step away from Manipur. The other next step you'll end up, it is in Myanmar. So there's one church which I have see. So when the LOC, when the border is there, one half of the church belongs to Myanmar. The other half belongs to India, to Manipur. Now there are certain situations like this, and it's not going to be a very easy walk in the park situation. And especially with the present situation where our Prime Minister is not saying anything about the Manipur issue. Number two, as you have mentioned about the Act East policy, how much that will be deterring, and there's as a deterrent on this particular economic situation with Manipur and India and Myanmar.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
now,
No,
that's
fair
big
enough.
problem.
Fair enough. The issue is, General, that if you look at Atal Bihari Vajpayee, or if you look at Manmohan Singh, even Prime Minister Modi for that, there was they insisted, they felt that there should be free movement of goods and people on the borders. That experiment completely failed because of the partisan attitude of the Pakistani state. I really don't need to get into it. There was an attempt for this free movement of goods and people. This also, FMR dismantling, is changing it. Do you think that it has the capacity to impact our relationship with the neighboring state? Because ultimately it was also a statement on part of our government. It's like a gesture.
No. It's not going to affect any kind of Act East policy or any kind of a humanitarian kind of initiative. For a simple reason, free movement does not mean you move illegally everywhere. Free movement means the legal movement through various passes or visa. That is what is intended. I recollect that 2018 when Sushma Swaraj, late Sushma Swaraj was the foreign minister, they had signed that they must have a border pass or a visa. But that is not the implementation is the issue. The border fencing will be smart or not smart. It will be effective only if it is manned properly. If the border is managed. Right now, we don't have the forces to manage it effectively. That is the issue. And I would like to also, for the information of viewers, is that the illegal activity which is going on here is not known to the mainstream media. 60,000 crore rupees worth of drugs, then weapons, then insurgents, and also other external elements active in and around our borders. So that is the importance that I would like to say. And not to forget about the Chinese activities already in northern Myanmar. So these are the issues we have to be extremely careful as far as security concerns are this. And I will repeat again, in which border of India we don't have ethnic ties across. And all the borders must be treated properly. I'm not saying don't allow people going and coming, but they have to come with proper legally, not illegally. That's the point that I would like to make here. And the fence will be effective if it is manned, otherwise no.
Okay, but keeping Dr. Singh, before I go to Mr. Bhagat, what has been our experience of the Bangladesh fence? General Singh, what has been our experience of the Bangladesh fence?
Question is to me?
Yes, the question is to you.
Oh, yes. If you recollect, right now, fortunately, in the recent past, at least about 5 years, I'm given to understand that the illegal immigrants have reduced significantly. In fact, today only I was reading this thing about Tripura has detected about 1,000 illegal migrants, Tripura alone. So I presume that at least in terms of a few thousands, at least 10 to 20,000 are definitely coming across, even if it is manned by the BSF in a very, very effective manner. But the fact remains that a lot of these people are still coming in. In the case of Bangladesh, that pull factor which we had 10, 20 years back is no longer there. Because the GDP and the economic progress of Bangladesh has deterred major infiltration or major migrations taking place to India right now in the last 5 to 7 years.
Okay. Okay, so it has bettered. But then, Professor Bhagat, it also requires some sort of cooperation from the states. Now, for example, the Chief Minister of Mizoram is not going ahead with the biometrics. It's like a policy statement. Now ZPM has inherited from MNF. You have these issues, you have these political issues. Then how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think you have brought a very important point. The state government must respond positively, and they cannot play with the national security issues. Just when the former Chief Minister of Mizoram saying that they are the brothers Kit and Keens on the other side of the border, you are forgetting one point, that this is all about the citizenship issue. This is all about facilities being availed by foreign nationals illegally, because our public distributive system somehow has been manipulated and used by the foreigners. And that is where we must check it, and central government has to give a very strong message to the state governments. I mean, they cannot go beyond the national security issues and play their local politics over and above the nation's larger political agenda. I would put it like that on that issue.
I think that's very well put. But Brijesh, I think it also reflects the sort of position which the centre has taken on the entire issue of Mizoram, Manipur. You know, the FMR coming at a point of time when a lot of people have been critical of certain issues there. I think they have put their neck out. You know, it's a very firm indication.
Well, yes, I think it's a very firm indication, and this is in constant with the demand which has been made by the Chief Minister. So, you know, as far as this FMR issue being implemented, both the centre and the state are in sync with what is observed. I agree with, broadly agree with what Professor Oinam Bhagat is saying, and what the general was saying. But the point is that again I would say, that this particular one issue is all right. I mean, I'm saying that you stop it. There's a 16-kilometer thing which goes on and all. In a normal situation, that would be welcome. But we live in abnormal times, in the sense, given the kind of ethnic conflict which is inside the state of Manipur and the state of decay which is in the state of, which is in Myanmar, which is fueling the entire thing. But if the purpose is to overall bring stability to the state of Manipur, I think a lot more needs to be done. I think
basically you're saying these are two different things. FMR should not be linked with the domestic issues. FMR
absolutely.
has a larger geostrategic positioning.
If you say that this is what is going to solve the influx of this thing, I completely agree. But if this is going to solve the problem in Manipur, I think it's just one part of it. Solving domestic problems require political processes to be in place. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more. We'll be joined by new guests. Stay tuned.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits
for missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility. Demands Kashmiri separatists.
Makbul Bhatt's release.
Goli maro. Or bang.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, I ordered it.
And he never came home.
Stop searching. Start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Seeing is believing. Or is it? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing.
Cannot identify what is deepfake and what is real.
We have seen Rashmika Mandana go through the same thing, and this is becoming a common problem.
Everybody is going to be targeted.
The execution is, there's a laxity in our regulatory execution. In times to come, that is going to cost us a lot.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, that US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back, and we are talking about the Indian-Myanmar border, the free movement to end, and I am joined by Professor Ashripan, Vice President Studies and Foreign Policy, ORF. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me today on the show On Point. Though FMR reports came out yesterday, today other salient features came out. The first thing which I would really like to know from you is, how does it affect our Act East policy? If you recall, Vajpayee ji spoke about movement of people and goods. It was an attempt which he made in Kashmir. It didn't work out because of the Pakistan stand. Now, similarly, on the eastern border, with the FMR being dismantled, it affects that, and we have a Kaladan project also there. So what's the big picture which is emerging? What's the first thing which struck your mind when you read the reports?
Well, I think in some ways it was bound to happen given the instability that India has been facing along the border. But certainly, when you look at when you think of India's Act East policy, which has been about connecting, whether it is various modes of connectivity, with especially people-to-people connectivity, and enhancing that across our eastern frontier, all the way to East and Southeast Asia, this has been an important element of that Act East policy. Now, I think in some ways our ASEAN partners will understand the challenge that India faces, because they also are facing a challenge with what is happening in Myanmar. Myanmar is a terrible tragedy that is unfolding, and this is as much of a problem for India as it is for ASEAN members. So I think in that sense that there will be some understanding of it. But I think the worst affected would be, of course, the people-to-people engagements that India and Myanmar had tried to build because of these ethnic and familial linkages that spread across the border. And that would be a challenge as to the disappointment and sometimes frustration and anger that people would feel at the collapse of FMR. But I think from India's vantage point, the kind of challenges that India has been facing, India had to balance its requirements for people-to-people ties with actually what is happening along the border and what is happening in Manipur in particular.
If you look at the issues at hand, Manipur is a classic example where nationality is feeding and thinking that it has turned into an ethnicity, and ethnicity is asserting itself as a nationality. The change in demography and the change in assertion in context of power led to this massive violence. And if you look at the action taken by states, it not only preserves the primacy of community, but is also sending a message that this demographic change which is occurring because of the fluid border cannot be allowed. And the voices are in unison from both state and the center, sir.
No, absolutely. And I think that is why this becomes, in some ways very important for India to make this stand very clear that, look, what is happening in Myanmar is very unfortunate. And what is also happening is that state in Myanmar is losing control. And with state, we mean at this point the military junta. The military junta is losing control over these border areas where militias have taken over. And those militias are actually not able to control those borders the way perhaps at its peak military junta was able to do. And therefore, therefore work with India in sustaining the FMR regime. Now that there is no partner on the other side, it doesn't make any sense for India to continue with this policy, and therefore I think India is reassessing its options. And as you said, is giving a very clear signal that look, at the end of the day, state has to resort to certain actions which are about enhancing the primacy of the state at a time when on one side of the border, state is becoming peripheral to the wider engagements, and therefore as non-state actors emerge as the primary conduit of negotiations of managing the border, it is very difficult for India to engage with them at this particular point. So therefore I think this makes sense from India from various perspectives.
Brijesh, tell me one thing, in context of the sort of position which the Chief Minister of Mizoram has taken, it's quite contrary to the position of the Chief Minister of Manipur. And then the position of the Chief Minister of Nagaland is ambivalent on this matter. So the discord which is there in terms of a policy which requires a national consensus is pretty evident in this area.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, what is unfortunate is that local compulsion or the ethnic compulsion is something which is forcing you to guide your interest. So what may be good for your political interest may not be good for the national interest. And there should be unison as far as that national interest is involved. We saw last time, when the previous Chief Minister also refused to get biometrics done of people who are there in the refugee camps, and they said like there's no way we are going to go ahead with it, despite pressure from the Centre Home Minister that that we should know where exactly who has all come in and all. So I think one of the underlying fact or the underlying point is that given the divergence of opinion of these three states also is not in sync with what the national interest require. This is something which has been the Manipur Chief Minister has been saying it for a very long time, right at the start of conflict, ever since we have been covering this.
But it's also surprising that you have a strong strategic national security step that is being taken, which is FMR, border, smart fence. But there is lack of political process simultaneously.
Absolutely.
The Chief Minister of Mizoram has not been engaged on the issue of biometrics. There is ambivalence there. Riot Act has not been read to a boss. There's rules which are in place passed by the Parliament of India. We need to know who is a foreigner and who is a citizen of India staying in Mizoram. Similarly, I would say even the political process has not kick-started. So you have a strong position, acts, policy being implemented, but on these issues there is, I wouldn't use the word leniency, but I would use that long rope is there.
It's like, show me the person, I'll tell you the kind of person. The adage goes that, you show me the guy, I'll tell you how I want to deal with it. It's the fact of the matter is that if there is one policy, it has to be dealt with, unequivocally by all the states. But it depends, most of the time the centre also gets very lenient. There are political considerations.
This is when BJP has Hemanta Biswa Sharma in charge of NIDA, it's not as if, they're not actively coordinating. Most of the ministers go. I'll come to you on this because
they are coordinating.
This FMR also has a political context. But then, Professor, does it change our engagement with Myanmar? And what is happening in Myanmar, how is it affecting our northeast security? Because you have multiple players in play there, sir.
Yeah. I mean, see, Myanmar what is happening in Myanmar is certainly very, very, problematic from various perspectives. And particularly, I think what India has been trying to do in Myanmar is to use the centrality of military junta to ensure that its borders are secure. Now, as military junta is unraveling, as you have these pro-democracy militias gaining ground vis-a-vis the military junta, it has put India in a very difficult position, because on the one hand, certainly India has been making a case that gradually military junta needs to move towards more of a democratic settlement of the problem. But you also require a strong government, a strong military in Myanmar that can handle the border issues as far as India's national interests are concerned. So I think there is now a contradiction emerging in that policy, which India will have to handle very delicately. And as we are speaking, we are looking at these pro-democracy militias gaining ground, and therefore challenging the might of the Myanmarese military. Perhaps that will shake up the Myanmarese military in ways that we have not seen over the last few years, but it will also entail certain costs that will be imposed on India's policy vis-a-vis the region, And it will also what India will need to do is to ensure that its interests are protected in a very, very difficult environment at this particular point. So therefore, a strong national security strategy that focuses on internal security at the moment and border areas is the need of the hour. And I think some of that we are seeing being implemented.
But you see, isn't it ironical that the world through various reporting agencies, Professor, know more about North Korea, which is called Hermit Kingdom, and less about Myanmar, which is so big, has a long border, is the only Southeast Asian state to have a Himalayan range. The northern part, it snows there, and it goes way down to the most commercial part of the seas. And people have no idea what sort of politics is there, how many ethnicities are there, the people there, who is in power. Very few people go to Mandalay. I was very fortunate enough to not only cross over from Moreh to the Tamu, which is the other side of the border in Myanmar, but I think I was the only journalist covering Prime Minister Modi when he went to Naypyidaw. And the only thing I realized was that you had Indians, you had Tamil expat population, but you knew very little about the entire country, and you have very few books on it. And this is the sleepiest, easiest to manage border, which is turning hot, sir.
Absolutely. I think very few people know about it and very few people understand the complexities of Myanmar. And I would also add that, as a result of that, we have seen a very black and white approach that is often taken by the Western countries in particular, where there is a lot of pressure being put on India that, look, you should do this, you should speak up for democracy, you should speak up for human rights, etc., without realizing the complexities that are inherent in the very management of a very complex society. And for India, multiple interests converge, border issues, insurgency, you have had internal security issues combined with that. And then this is played out in real time in the last few months as the Manipur situation got out of hand. So I think that the lack of understanding is also a reflection in some ways of the challenges that a country like India faces. And in our own case, we have seen how few people, before Mr. Shah spoke as the Home Minister in Parliament about this, how there were hardly a handful of people who knew that this is also a problem. The Manipur problem is also being impacted by Myanmar. I think the entire focus was on internal dimension of the problem, without realizing that a large part of this problem is externally driven. So I think certainly the lack of knowledge, the lack of awareness about Myanmar has also led to some of these policy challenges that India as a country is facing day in and day out, both internally as it is manifesting itself in Myanmar, as well as externally with its partners in the West.
And do you think that in context of our decision to have a smart fenced border to control, monitor the movement of people, have we come to a stage where there is a question in front of the Indian state? Whom should we talk to when it comes to Myanmar? Something which was there in Afghanistan. Whom should we talk? Those who are fighting against the regime, those the independent areas in north, those who are sitting in Naypyidaw. Are we talking about a sort of a state which has now multiple power centers and their problems are spilling into our country? And that is why the FMR and the smart fence border, which now reports have come out, will be complete in 4 years and 6 months.
No, absolutely. I think a lot of this decision making has to do with the fact that Myanmar's internal problems, internal challenges have become so acute that there is no guarantor of India's interests at this point. Because for a long time, what India was telling its partners in the West, that it's a very challenging situation in Myanmar. We'd have to rely on certain deliverables to be delivered via the military junta. Therefore, we have to engage with the military government. The West was asking us to cut off all ties with the military government and support the pro-democracy movement. And I think gradually, and India was saying that, look, we are engaged with all stakeholders, because for us, Myanmar is very important. As we all know, more than 1,600 kilometers of border we share with 4 states, with 4 of our states with regard to Myanmar. So I think the question that India was facing has always been very, very central to our imagination of what Northeast should look like. The whole, you started this conversation with Act East. The whole idea of Act East policy was to make Northeast the bridge of our Act East policy and to ensure development in Northeast through Act East policy. And I think some of those challenges are being manifested right at the moment as well in the kind of
and
issues.
Before
that
I
we are
let go of
facing,
this is what I was thinking today morning. I know it's an adjacent question, but I must take this opportunity to ask you. Americans have squeezed the life out of Myanmar. They are after Sheikh Hasina's life. Both these places are pro-India, and then they give intense leeway to states which are completely anti-India, which is like Taliban had a free run, the Pakistan has a free run. Why does it happen?
That's how interest works.
I mean, it just bewilders me.
Yes, I think often, Indians find, all of us find it very bewildering that Americans who have actually been one of our strongest partners over the last few years, emerged as one of our strongest partners, often continues to get our neighborhood so wrong. And this is a legacy that we face from Pakistan days, when we used to tell them that, look, Pakistan is the source of the problem, and they used to lecture us. Today it has come to the other side. They have realized their challenges with Pakistan, but on the other side, on the eastern frontier of India, we continue to face these differences, both with regard to, as you pointed out, Bangladesh and Myanmar. But hopefully, with as our relations develop, we can perhaps make them see light of the day.
Thank you so much, Professor Pant. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Brijesh, for making time out of your busy schedule. So this entire On Point program was on FMR, and why this border is intensely important to us, why Myanmar is so important to us. Generally, the whole idea in the strategic community is that it's Pakistan, Afghanistan, but the importance of Myanmar, the BIMSTEC, Southeastern approach is something very fundamental to India's not only national but also economic security. But before I let go of you, let me introduce you to our sister concern News 9 Plus, and a beautiful documentary they have made. Migration happens, people migrate illegally, but of late this has been happening too often. People trying to go out, take various means. You must have seen people in huge convoys from Nicaragua, running towards the Mexican borders, from Mexico to the borders in Texas to get inside America. But then this has not left India untouched. Why does it happen? What prompts people to do these things? Have a look at this documentary.
उन्होंने मुझे बताया था कि आप चिंता मत करो, मैं आपको भरोसा दिलाता हूँ, फिर ये मेरा परिवार सब खत्म हो गया.
In a disturbing discovery on the Minnesota-Canada border, police found the bodies of 4 family members who they say froze to death.
Sent shockwaves across 2 continents and left many people asking a simple question: why?
प्रवीण भाई ने मुझे बताया था कि मैं घूमने के लिए, मेरा वीज़ा आया है कनाडा का, तो मैं घूमने के लिए जा रहा हूँ. फिर बाद में जो उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि मेरी निकुल से बात हुई है और वो मुझे यहाँ से अमेरिका क्रॉसिंग करवाना का बोल रहा था. तो 2-3 दिन बाद प्रवीण भाई का फ़ोन आया मुझे, और वो बोले कि यहाँ पे जो सचिन है उनका फ़ोन आया था, तो वो बोल रहा है कि यहाँ से लाइन क्लियर नहीं हो रही, तो अभी आपको बोट में जाना पड़ेगा. फिर मैंने निकुल को फ़ोन किया कि आप, अपनी बात तो हुई है टैक्सी में, तो ऐसे बोट में ले जाएगा तो हमको नहीं जाना है, जो जहाँ से लाया था वहाँ छोड़ दे. तो वो निकुल बोला कि प्रवीण भाई को बात हो गई है और 6-7 मिनट का रास्ता है, जब आप आंखें पलक के बंद करोगे तब वहाँ पे पहुँच जाओगे. लेकिन जब बैठे तब मेरी भतीजी का फ़ोन मेरे पे आया था, और वो बोल रही थी कि अंकल मैं जब बोट में बैठ गए और वो बोट है वो जो बार बार बंद हो जाती है. तभी मैंने उनको पूछने की कोशिश की कि कैसे होता है, कैसे क्यों बंद हो जाती है, लेकिन तभी फ़ोन मेरा कट गया था और फिर मुझे कुछ उसको कांटेक्ट नहीं हुआ है. फिर सुबह में तो न्यूज़ द्वारा, मीडिया द्वारा मुझे पता चला कि वो बोट में से 4 गुजराती लोग थे, ऐसा हुआ है, फिर मालूम पड़ा।
In today's time and date, there's a big community, there's a diaspora which is settled already in the US. So when, like right now, if I were to say that it's because of economic conditions that a person is moving to the US, no, this region of northern Gujarat is at par with Gujarat, with rest of India. So that's not the case. But probably it's just because somebody in the past has done this, there's someone who's made it big, who is motivating today's youngsters to go there.
According to the UN's International Organization for Migration, the number of international migrants around the world had touched 281 million in 2020.
और वहाँ से एजेंट लोग इतने, उनके कनेक्शन इतना हर जगह पे फैला हुआ है, वो एक दूसरे से ऐसे बोलते थे, पहले बोलते लीगल भेजेंगे आपको, बाद में आप उनको इलीगल वे से आप किसी तरह बसों में भेजते हैं, या किसी की शक्ल मिलती पासपोर्ट को दे देते हैं, ऐसे भेज देते हैं। जैसे जैसे वो पैसे ले लेते हैं, अगर लड़के जो भी जा रहा है उसका कुछ भी हो, वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है उनकी।
हाँ देखिए, समटाइम्स हमारे पास कई तरह की क्वेरीज आती हैं। अब कुछ लोग आते हैं कि 10th करा होता है उन्होंने, एंड दे आस्क कि हमें आप डॉक्यूमेंट्स आप बनाइए, फेक डॉक्यूमेंट्स आप लगाइए और हमें बस बाहर भेज दीजिए। इवन कि वो लोग बहुत अच्छा हमें पे करने को भी रेडी होते हैं, अच्छा पे करना चाहते हैं। जैसे बैंक का है, कुछ बैंक की स्टेटमेंट किसी की निकालनी, उसको एडिट कर दिया और बच्चों की डिग्रीज़ को चेंज कर दिया। अब कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं, हमने सुना है जैसे स्टूडेंट्स आके बोलते हैं कि इतने पैसे ले लो और हमें आप यूनिवर्सिटीज़ का डिग्री बना दो या डिप्लोमा बना दो, जिसके बिहाफ पे हम अपना आगे अप्लाई कर सकें। पहले तो स्टूडेंट्स को नहीं पता लगता, पर जब वो आफ्टर वीज़ा जब वो रीच कर जाते हैं और जब परमिट होता है उनका और PR के लिए अप्लाई करना, उस टाइम पे ये चीज़ें सामने आती हैं फिर कि जो फेक चीज़ें हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं तो पकड़ी जाएंगी ना।
मेरे एजेंट ने मुझे बताया कि अगर मैं आल्स क्लियर कर लूँ उसके बाद मैं अपना वर्क वीज़ा अप्लाई करूँगी। आप जब मेरा वीज़ा लग जाएगा देन वो बताएंगे कि कौन सा काम करना है आप।
अच्छा, कौन सी कंट्री जाना चाहती हो आप?
ऑस्ट्रेलिया।
क्या करना चाहते हो ऑस्ट्रेलिया में?
स्टडी।
क्या स्टडी करना है? एजेंट बताएगा आपको क्या स्टडी करना है, उसके अकॉर्डिंग आप करोगे।
यस। हाँ।
There is, I would say, there is an element of increase, especially amongst people involved in crimes also, because this was related to Deepak Pahal alias Boxer, and he left country on 6th of Jan and eventually was caught in Cancun on 6th of April. So he was on the move for 3 months and he went across more than 10 countries, 4 continents, so many time zones.
According to the US Customs and Border Protection data, over 60,000 Indians entered the country illegally during 2021-2022, a 109% increase from 30,000 in the previous fiscal year. The UK Home Office has reported a sharp increase from a mere 67 Indian immigrants in 2021 to 683 in 2022, entering via small boats. And according to the UNHCR data, more than 11,000 illegal immigrants from India had applied for asylum in other countries in 2021.
Illegal migration or legal migration constitutes the maximum number of Indians. For instance, Canada accounted for more than 25% of Indians coming to Canada as immigrants. Now, out of that 25%, easily more than half are, illegal immigrants also. But assumingly that a person does land at a port of entry in US, UK, or Canada, or Australia, anywhere. So the first thing to do is that they claim what is called as a refugee status. At least I can speak about Canada for that matter, is that they speak refugee status, or what is also called asylum, right? It could be on a range of reasons, chiefly being that they are persecuted back in their home countries on the basis of their race, religion, nationality, political thought.
मैंने किया था असाइलम के लिए अप्लाई, तो उन्होंने रिफ्यूज कर दिया। Political issue.
Anytime a migration happens, whether legal or illegal, it is always a brain drain on the country concerned that is losing its human capital. Now, if these are people who are skilled or even people who are unskilled, there is a lot of money that is also going out of India, right? If money is being paid to these illegal agents, it is definitely not being paid in white. It is being paid in black, in cash. So a lot of that money is also getting out of the system into the hands of these people. The people are also moving out of the country. So not only is there a financial drain, there is also a human capital drain. There is also, a rupturing or breaking away of families.
From our side, we should try to educate more and more people to go through the legal ways. In that, we need to educate them properly and help them with proper documentation.
In 21-22, we have been hearing some cases of Uttarakhand. But you have to remember Uttarakhand not as a Uttarakhand. There is a huge population of Punjabi origin people in Uttarakhand. So basically it's same ethnic group from Punjab, Haryana and Uttarakhand. These are the three sources of states from India going to the donkey type of movement in these countries, especially USA.
As the trend of illegal immigration seeps into rural areas of Haryana, despite being duped or deported, the villagers are unfazed. They still dream of going abroad again. The entire Thatrat village near Jind in Haryana wakes up to the bursting of crackers and sometimes DJ music in the middle of the night, announcing that one of their own has safely reached the destination.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा।
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है मनी 9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
This was intended to be a terrorist spectacular without precedent.
The plan was to bomb 2 Air India passenger aircrafts simultaneously.
There was a loud explosion and the whole plane just vanished. The police dropped the ball, the intelligence officers dropped the ball, and the politicians dropped the ball.
It was a conspiracy that destroyed my life. It destroyed 331 lives.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's begin with some big news that's coming in this evening from Iran. Twin explosions have killed over 100 people and wounded more than 170 others at a ceremony in Iran to commemorate top commander Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in a 2020 US drone attack. Iranian state television has reported a first and then a second explosion during an anniversary event at the cemetery where Soleimani is buried in the southeastern city of Kerman. The blasts have been described as terrorist attacks. Another news agency reported that several gas canisters exploded on the road leading to the cemetery. State television showed Red Crescent rescuers attending to wounded people at the ceremony, where hundreds of Iranians had gathered to mark the anniversary of Soleimani's death. Some Iranian news agencies have said the number of wounded people is actually much higher. The death toll, as we said, has already crossed 100, and it seems like at least 200 others have been injured. We don't know yet about their condition, but of course there are fears that the death toll could rise further. And as we said, this happened during an event to mark the 4th anniversary of top commander Qasem Soleimani. He was killed in a US drone attack in January 2020.
The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
Let's now shift our focus to the Israel-Hamas war that continues to rage 3 months after the horrific Hamas terror attacks that took place in Israel on the 7th of October. Now, who was Saleh al-Aruri? That is the question that is being asked today. Why? Well, here's why. Israel's war against Hamas has reached the Lebanese capital, Beirut. On Tuesday, an Israeli strike killed Hamas's deputy leader, Saleh al-Aruri, along with his bodyguards. The strike hit a Hamas office in Beirut's southern suburbs, a stronghold of Lebanon's Iran-backed Hezbollah movement. The strike has added to persistent fears that the 3-month-old Israel-Hamas war could escalate into a wider conflagration in the region. Israel has long accused Aruri of lethal attacks on its citizens, but a Hamas official said he was also at the heart of negotiations over the outcome of the Gaza war and the release of hostages conducted by Qatar and Egypt. While Israel has not officially confirmed its role in the killing, Mark Regev, a senior advisor to Israel's prime minister, said whoever did this did a surgical strike against the Hamas leadership. The Israeli army today said it is prepared for any scenario, stoking fears that the war in the Gaza Strip could boil over, as we said, into wider regional conflict. The Israeli army spokesperson Daniel Hagari did not directly comment on the killing, but said the military was in a very high state of readiness in all arenas, in defense and offense, and he said we are highly prepared for any scenario. Israel has previously announced the deaths of Hamas commanders and officials during the war in Gaza, but Aruri is the most high-profile figure to be killed, and his death came in the first strike on the Lebanese capital since Israel-Hamas hostilities began. Now, Hamas has said that Aruri's death would not lead to its defeat, while its Lebanon-based ally Hezbollah has vowed that the killing will not go unpunished, calling it a serious assault on Lebanon and a dangerous development. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati has condemned the killing and said it aims to draw Lebanon further into the war. So, just who was Saleh al-Aruri and why is his killing significant? Aruri was seen as a key player in the movement, masterminding its operations in the West Bank from exile in Syria, Turkey and Qatar, and finally Lebanon after long stints in Israeli prisons. As the Hamas group's senior official in Lebanon, he played a big role in cementing Hamas's relations with the Lebanese Shiite group Hezbollah and through it with Iran, the main backer for both these groups. Within Hamas, Aruri was described as a leading advocate of reconciliation between rival Palestinian factions, enjoying a good relationship with Fatah, the party of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, which holds sway in the West Bank. But when it came to the conflict with Israel, Aruri was seen as a hardliner. He helped found the group's military wing, the Izz el-Din al-Qassam brigades, and Israel accused him of orchestrating deadly attacks against its citizens over the years. Israel says Aruri was behind the kidnapping and killing of 3 Israeli teenagers in the West Bank in 2014, an act that triggered a 7-week Israeli assault on Gaza that left 2,100 Palestinians dead. From his early days as a student leader at Hebron University to his eventual position as deputy chairman of the Hamas political bureau, Saleh al-Aruri's journey was marked by violence, imprisonment and a tumultuous relationship with Israel. His death in an Israeli strike in Beirut comes as a defining moment in the escalating tensions in the Middle East. Aruri's ascent to the role of deputy chairman of the Hamas political bureau in 2017 solidified his standing as a key political figure within the organization. Accused by both Israel and the United States of overseeing Hamas's military operations in the occupied West Bank, his presence on the US list of terrorists since 2015 added an international dimension to his notoriety. Hamas and its allies, including Lebanon-based Hezbollah, as we said, have vowed retaliation, deepening concerns about the widening scope of this ongoing conflict. The strike has not only stirred tensions between Israel and Lebanon, but also drawn condemnation from the Lebanese Prime Minister, who fears further entanglement in the war. Meanwhile, the Times of Israel's Hebrew news portal, Zaman Yisrael, has reported that Israeli officials have had clandestine talks with the African nation of Congo and several others for the potential acceptance of Gaza immigrants. Israeli sources have been quoted as saying Congo will be willing to take in migrants and we're in talks with others. Israel's intelligence minister Gila Gamliel has been quoted as telling the Knesset, that's the Israeli parliament, and I quote, "At the end of the war, Hamas rule will collapse. There are no municipal authorities. The civilian population will be entirely dependent on humanitarian aid. There will be no work and 60% of Gaza's agricultural land will become security buffer zones." Saying that hatred will continue in Gaza and further attacks on Israel are only a matter of time, she added, "The Gaza problem is not just our problem. The world should support humanitarian immigration because that's the only solution I know." Now, on Tuesday, the United States condemned Israel's far-right ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir for advocating the resettlement of Palestinians outside of Gaza. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said this rhetoric is inflammatory and irresponsible. He said, "We've been clear, consistent and unequivocal that Gaza is Palestinian land and will remain Palestinian land with Hamas no longer in control of its future and with no terror groups able to threaten Israel." Now, Israeli Minister Smotrich has called for Palestinian residents to leave the besieged Gaza Strip and make way for Israelis who could, quote-unquote, make the desert bloom. Interior Minister Ben-Gvir has said the war in Gaza presents an opportunity to concentrate on encouraging the migration of the residents of Gaza. Such statements underscore fears among many in the Arab world that Israel wants to drive Palestinians out of the land where they envision a future state, repeating the mass dispossession of Palestinians when Israel was created in 1948. And in further trouble for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a new poll suggests that only 15% of Israelis want him to remain in office once the war in Gaza is over. Most seem to prefer Netanyahu's political rival and current war cabinet minister, centrist leader Benny Gantz, instead.
I will answer clearly, like I said in the statement. I won't respond to what was heard here or elsewhere. We are focused on the battle against Hamas from the beginning, and we will continue to do so. And we will update the public with instructions when needed, and we change and specify instructions accordingly. In the noon, evening and morning, and will continue to do so. The public is also responsible and will continue to be as such, and we will update the instructions. These instructions are life-saving. With pride, with faith and persistence to continue the path of the martyrs, we mourn with our Palestinian people everywhere in...
The developments are extremely worrying, and I think this just really highlights what the Secretary General had just said about the dangers of the spillover of this conflict in the wider region. Well, we don't have all the details, and we don't have all the facts yet. We know that the Secretary General urges all parties to exercise maximum restraint and take urgent steps to de-escalate tensions in the region. I mean, he was very clear in that he's mentioned it, that this continued fighting has the risk of a great miscalculation by multiple actors, and I think this is what we've been seeing in different parts of the region, sadly. So we again appeal to all members of the international community to do everything in their power to prevent an escalation to the situation there. Because of the escalating tensions and the fragility of the situation in the region, we are calling for maximum restraint from all parties. We don't want any rash actions that could trigger further violence.
All right, so some big developments are taking place in this ongoing Israel-Hamas war. To make sense of it all, we're joined tonight on Global Lens by Colonel Myri Eisen, Director at the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism at Reichman University in Israel. Welcome back, Colonel Eisen. Good to have you with us. Also joining me on the show tonight is Itai Melchior, Research and Advisor, Middle East and Africa Affairs, and former executive and Israeli National Security Council. He joins us live from Haifa in Israel. And completing the panel tonight is our Indian guest, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, defense and geopolitical expert, joining us from Delhi tonight. A warm welcome to all the guests. I'll request you to stay on with us. I need to take a quick break here on the show. On the other side, a complete analysis of all the major developments in the Israel-Hamas war.
Seeing is believing. Or is it? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing.
Cannot identify what is deepfake and what is real.
We have seen Rashmika Mandana go through the same thing, and this is becoming a common problem.
Everybody is going to be targeted.
The execution there's a laxity in our regulatory execution. In times to come, that is going to cost us a lot.
Welcome back to Global Lens. We're discussing the Israel-Hamas war. Let me go straight across to our panel of experts. Colonel Myri Eisen, let me begin with you. We were meant to discuss the killing of Saleh al-Aruri, Hamas's deputy leader in Lebanon, on this show tonight. But in just the last few hours, we've had the big breaking news coming in from Iran, where more than 100 people have been killed at an anniversary event that was meant to commemorate the 4th death anniversary of top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, as we know that he was killed in a US drone attack in 2020. My question to you, Colonel Eisen, and to the rest of the panel is simply this. We've seen in the last few days that Musavi is killed in Syria, correct me if I'm wrong, but by the US forces. Aruri is killed in Lebanon. Israel has not confirmed it, but it is widely believed that it is Israel indeed. And today blasts have been reported in Iran, at this Soleimani anniversary event. Are we seeing a pattern here? Is this Israel's new war strategy? Has Israel decided to go after the Hamas, Hezbollah and Quds network?
I think not, Neha. In this case, I would not compare the two targeted killings of whoever takes responsibility of a very top Iranian commander who was responsible for the entire relationship of bringing in weapons and capabilities from the Islamic regime of Iran to Hezbollah sitting in Damascus. He was killed. As you mentioned, Salah al-Arouri was killed last night in Lebanon. Neither one do we have clear claims of responsibility, but that's the kind of thing that academically I would call targeting top echelon terrorists who have openly been involved in both the recruiting of terrorists, training of terrorists, bringing in money in a vast different way. The attack, as both of us are following it right now, of what happened in Iran, and yes, it's happened in Iran, but it's what we would call a terror attack. This was against civilians. They were going out to commemorate Soleimani, who, I don't want to be sarcastic about it, but Soleimani was an arch terrorist as far as I'm concerned, but attacking crowds of people in a ceremony of a funeral is not the same kind of thing as targeting top terrorists. So I don't compare the three. I think that Iran has its own challenges of its own population who protest that same terrorist Islamic regime, and that this kind of attack that took place in the heart of Iran at a funeral memorial ceremony near the cemetery where Qasem Soleimani is buried, this is something that, as I look from the outside, domestic, going against that Islamic regime.
All right, Itai Melchior, is this a mere coincidence? Or are these events of the past few days clearly linked? Israel has said time and again that we will go after our enemies no matter where they are. Many Israeli leaders and defense officials have even named specific countries in the Arab world, saying we are not going to leave any stone unturned. Now, here on the show tonight, we're talking about more than 100 people who've been killed in twin blasts in Iran. These are people who were commemorating Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in a US drone strike 4 years ago. We're talking about how it is believed Israel carried out a strike near Beirut in Lebanon and killed Saleh Arouri, the number 2 or at least a very high profile figure in Hamas. And very recently, you also had the assassination of Iranian commander Sayyid Musavi in Syria. Again, suspected involvement of Israel there. I mean, are we to really understand that these are all unrelated events?
I mean, I think my colleague Colonel Eisen said it all. I will not confirm, I cannot confirm or nor deny that Israel was involved in those targeted killings, but I would actually put money on Israel not being involved in what happened in Iran today. This is not the Israeli way. Yes, we have vowed to fight our enemies. Yes, we will attack infrastructure which is used against Israel, but this is not the Israeli way to attack innocent civilians just for the fun of it. I mean, it's no purpose. We do know that Iran is marred with a big opposition, which is very unhappy with the leadership, and Soleimani was part of the leadership. So it does make sense that some terrorist organization would do this. Again, vile and totally uncalled for. We have no death wish for any Iranian civilian. They have not done us any harm. And as you said, we target military targets and try to do so very surgically, as you mentioned. Both the incidents you mentioned, both in Syria and in Lebanon, were people who were very much involved in arms smuggling, in management. Arouri was also the commander for Hamas for Judea and Samaria, also called the West Bank. and one of his targets was to turn the relatively peaceful living side by side Palestinian Authority with Israel into a Gaza-like area, something which is very negative, and that's why his name has been up there in the list of people that are doing very, very bad actions and should be stopped. So no one in Israel has lost a tear on that.
Okay, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, let me come to you, sir. Do you buy what our Israeli guests are saying, that these events are completely unrelated? Because if you look at it, many would argue that there seems to be a pattern emerging here, and not only is Israel fighting Hamas in Gaza, it seems to be going after the Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah and Quds axis. And now it's very clear that the war is no longer confined to just Gaza. At least that is what many would argue.
Thank you, Neha, for inviting me. Now, it is not for us to aggregate or disaggregate what's happened in the course of last few days. There is a talk of IDF going in for phase 3 of the operation. Phase 1 being Gaza City, phase 2 being Khan Yunis, and phase 3 being creation of that buffer zone and targeted killings of people who are been involved into this one. So while Israel is not owned up for the killing of Musawi in Syria or of Auri in Lebanon, but the fact is that what matters is perceptions. What are the global perceptions on this issue? In the killing of this Lebanese in Lebanon, there has been tweets here to say that Israel had not informed United States about this killing. And while the operation was on, the United States representatives were told that this operation is on. This is all available on X, which is X-Twitter. So, there are perceptions being created all across saying that both of these were Israeli killings. And I don't want to aggregate and accept it or not accept it, because we are just, truth is the first casualty in war. Nobody says the truth at all. So we can't say who has done it, but the perceptions are this. Now, the third event which you are referring to, the one in Iran, is even more serious. When 4 years ago, Soleimani was hit and killed on 3rd of January 2000, I think.
2020, exactly 4 years ago.
2020, 4 years ago. There were 2 missiles, and it was stated to be United States which had targeted it. And the Iranians had responded to this strike by hitting the bases of the United States in Iraq. And that was immediate response that the Iranians had done. Now, if the perceptions are such, and Soleimani was also disliked all over the world on various counts, because as overseas representative of the Quds or the IRGC, overseas worker. But the fact is that there is, he was respected in his own country as a military leader and an effective one that way. So if whatever happens in this case, it will be blamed again on the doorsteps of United States or Israel. Even if they're not done, even if it's an internal matter, the perceptions will be carried and they would be responsive. I'll also add one more issue here. The targeting of Auri in Lebanon, in the suburbs of Beirut, that's actually a Hezbollah suburb, and which the place was given. And Auri had met, this fellow Nasrullah in October, 2 months ago, when Nasrullah had visited Beirut from Qatar when he'd come. So, he was a senior figure in this whole game. When you hit in an area which is actually Hezbollah area in Beirut, there is an obvious spread. And Hezbollah is an army. They say they have a force of 150,000. God alone knows, nobody can count how many they have. And they would have about 100,000 rockets. Again, you can't be sure as what is the truth. But the fact is that, the Israeli representative or the spokesperson has said that we are prepared for a response from Lebanon, from Hezbollah side, means that they are prepared to accept that the Iron Dome will face a whole a lot of bunch of these rockets flying in, overwhelm Iron Dome, as Iron Dome got overwhelmed on 7th of October. So, the fact is that this is possibility of expansion, possibility of conflagration in the region exists here. And I think it's not a fair idea. And I'll end by saying that this Congo thing, they copied all these immigrants that went to UK and they are now being transported to Rwanda. And then South Africa is now fighting something against Israel for humanitarian killings, etc. There is a distaste going across. There's an anger and anguish across large number of nations here. Also because their buffer zone is being created inside Gaza Strip. Now, if you take 60% of Gaza land and
what
create
is
a
left
buffer,
for the 2.3 million people? Exactly.
Where would exactly, and to say that they can be sent to Congo. Congo is already in fire for quite some years. Yes. So how are we going to happen? And Congo has got United Nations force happening there. So I think this conflagration, instead of controlling the issue, it is spreading beyond imagination, and it's not a good idea.
It doesn't augur well at all for the world at large. And I want to discuss the Congo issue in great detail because it's extremely controversial. Some of the statements that are being made by one Israeli minister after another. We're going to discuss that and more after this quick break. Stay with us.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, the US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. We are discussing the Israel-Hamas war. All right, let me go back to Colonel Myri Eisen. And this, I have two questions for both my Israeli guests, Colonel Eisen and Itai Melchior. I'll start with you, Colonel Eisen. Number one, what do you make of the fact that many believe, even if you do not want to link today's blasts that have taken place in Iran to the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, the fact that the Hamas deputy leader, Saleh al-Aruri, has been assassinated in Lebanon, and Lebanon, or at least Hezbollah, has vowed revenge or retaliation. What do you make of the fact that a lot of people see that this is going to significantly escalate the war in the region, that is no longer going to remain confined to Gaza? That's one. Two, what's with all the irresponsible and provocative statements that are being made by one Israeli minister after another? I'm not saying you speak for the Israeli government, but just look at some of these statements. Israel's intelligence minister says, the Gaza problem is not just our problem. The world should support humanitarian immigration because that's the only solution I know. Smotrich says that Palestinians should leave Gaza and make way for Israelis who can make the desert bloom. And then there is the notorious Ben-Gvir, who says that this is an opportunity to concentrate on encouraging the migration of the residents of Gaza. Even the United States is appalled. And the US State Department has called these statements irresponsible and inflammatory. And, you know, when you have so many Israeli ministers who represent the Netanyahu government making such statements, can you blame people for saying that this is what Israel wants to do? Drive Palestinians out of Gaza?
Neha, I'm going to make it easy for you. I'm going to start with the first question and then I'll go to the second one. When it comes to Saleh al-Aruri, I would pose it for both of us to have a discussion. What do you do with arch terrorists? Are they allowed to have a safe haven anywhere? They overtly stand up and say, I did this. He took claim not just for the 7th of October. He's taken claim for many terror attacks against Israel. He's proud of it. He was effective. He did this for many years. So I'm just asking in that sense, is there a safe haven? Did Israel do it? Did somebody else do it? The man was living, the terrorist was living. He's a Palestinian from the West Bank. He sat in Israeli jail for many years. He was exported from Jordan to Syria. Syria kicked him out. He ended up in Lebanon. Lebanon is, I don't want to say lovely, but it is a failed state. Lebanon hosts Palestinian terror organizations, other jihadi terror organizations. I don't think Lebanon wants them. Hezbollah is not just any terror organization, it's Lebanese. And the attack against Saleh al-Aruri was in that Lebanese Beirut area that the Indian general so clearly defined before. When I look at that, I don't think that we should allow a top terrorist to feel safe anywhere. That's what I feel about it. I don't think that that enlarges the war. I think that it ends the war. I think that when terrorists feel safe, then they do attacks like October 7th. And because of that, I say that I don't know of any other way to get to terrorists than the way that perhaps Israel did against Saleh al-Aruri or whoever it was. When it comes to the Israeli government, I'm going to share with my amazing Indian audience, and as I speak with you, Neha, every once in a while, we get to talk to each other. Go online, not you, but our audience. There are 36 ministers in the Israeli government. Every single one of them has a different opinion. I think that we have lots of opinionated, different voices that I, Mary, personally very much disagree with, but I very much support freedom of opinion. The fact that they say it does not mean that it's policy. The fact that they tout it does not mean that anybody is going to do it. Does it do damage to Israel? Depends who you ask. The present Israeli government has very challenging voices in it, both within Israel and in the world. in my own analysis, at the head of the institute that I run, in our analysis, the option of having 2.3 million people moving from the Gaza Strip is not an option. If Minister Gila Gamliel says that, what she's expressing is what she'd like, but that's not something that's probably going to ever happen. Are there voices like that inside Israel? There are. And just like we have a variety of voices, some of which you think of as being more extreme, I but imagine that also in India, in a democracy, you have a variety of voices on policy. That doesn't mean that that's the policy that is enacted. So yes, the voices are there, Neha, but I do not think in any way that that's the policy, even of this present government in Israel. It certainly is not the one that they are touting. The prime minister has certainly never said so, and he's first among equal. And I say that because I really do believe that I'm going to listen to those voices. I oppose them, I say on a personal level, but I do not even think that it is the policy of this government of Israel.
I have to say, Colonel Eisen, it's very reassuring to hear you say that these Israeli ministers do not speak for Israelis like yourself. You know, no wonder this is referred to as the most far-right government ever in Israel's history. But at the end of the day, these three individuals that I've just quoted do represent the Netanyahu government. So let me put this question to Itai Melchior. Itai Melchior, your thoughts on these comments that have been made by three Israeli ministers, not one, not two, three of them. One is an interior minister, the other is an intelligence minister. The US State Department, no less, has said these remarks are inflammatory and irresponsible. And on top of that, what are we to make of the report that has come out in the Times of Israel, which says that Israeli officials have held clandestine talks with Congo and other countries for the potential acceptance of Gaza immigrants. Israeli sources have been quoted as saying Congo is willing to take in migrants and we're in talks with others. You know, and for Israel to then say we don't want to reoccupy Gaza, we don't want to take away Palestinian land from those people, we don't want to dispossess 2.3 million people. I think it will be very hard for people to take those claims being made by Israel at face value. And, you know, people still have horrific memories of what's happened over the decades, going all the way back to 1948.
Yes, as my colleague Eisen has already answered part of the question, let me shed a light on three other points which are related to your question. Let's start with the easiest. There are two Congos in Africa, neighboring countries. Most people confuse them and can't tell one from the other. The Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, and the other Congo neighboring Congo, Brazzaville, which is a neighboring country. Israel has good relations with the DRC, but I can tell you that just this Sunday, the results of the presidential elections were announced, and as we're speaking now, the results of the parliamentary elections are being announced. So therefore, I seriously doubt that anybody in the last few weeks in the DRC of any significance has been doing anything besides rallying, for sure not talking with Israel. And I also seriously doubt that the other Congo has been in talks with Israel about this. So therefore, I would kind of disregard this rumor that's going around. Maybe next time we speak, I'll be able to say something more definite about it. But for now, I really don't buy this. But as the same way as many Indians will very much like to shut their eyes and wake up in the world where there's no Pakistan and they're actually neighboring with Switzerland and Norway, the same way is true for Israelis. We've had so much grief from Gaza, and if it could just disappear, I know many have many left-wing, pro-peace, pro-two-state solution people that tell you that their real dream was for the Gaza problem to go away, and it is a problem. Now, you talk about things that are possible and not possible.
Okay, we seem to have lost the link there to Itai Melchior. Therefore, I'll put the same question to Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma. General Sharma, you know, some of our Israeli friends may say that we do not agree with these Israeli ministers. They don't speak for Israelis like us. But fact of the matter is, too many conflicting signals are emanating from Tel Aviv. While the Prime Minister may say we don't want to reoccupy Gaza, when you have 3 ministers in the Netanyahu government constantly talking about migration of Palestinians from Gaza, my question simply is, how are you going to trust Israel and its motives? Because there are obviously suspicions in the Arab world, going by some historical events, that Israel wants to drive Palestinians out of their land. And these utterances do not help Israel's cause at a time when it's already drawing so much flack from around the world for the growing death toll in Gaza.
So, Neha, it's very heartening, as you said, to listen to your Israeli guests on the panel, because they have explained that this may not be happening, especially because of the internal situation in Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, but having said that, you see, we learn from what has been published and what's been spoken about by the Israeli ministers, and they may not be consensus there, but they are speaking. Also, the Israeli media that publishes all these documents and information. So now it's a newspaper called Zam Israeli, or Israel, that says that there is an expulsion policy which has already been debated in the cabinet, and the expulsion policy is also got some other name saying voluntary movement of Palestinians from there. Plus, there is also issue of a Philadelphia corridor. The Philadelphia corridor is a 14-kilometer belt which was decided in 1979 between Israel and Egypt, which is where the Rafah crossing is there, the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza, which the Israelis want to now take over, including the Rafah crossing, which makes it that now there is an issue across with Egypt, because the Philadelphia corridor is being controlled by Egyptians. And then there is an issue of creating the buffer all around Gaza Strip. Naturally, it is absolutely understandable that Israel wants to protect itself from any attacks that emanate from closer to their borders with Gaza, which hit their settlements very close by. The fact is that the population is so large that it's impossible to create a buffer zone, take on the Philadelphia corridor also, box in from the sea, and then you expect these people to live there in that area, which as it is was very difficult. Now, Democratic Republic of Congo, though elections are on, there is a large tracts of land which are headed by the rebels. And there is a United Nations force which is supposed to separate the rebel areas. And it's not been a very successful United Nations operations also over a period of time in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They may be discussing with other countries, as has been pointed out here. This is not, I think, a long-term solution. When any armed forces decide to go in, then end state ought to be visualized. Now to say that after Hamas as a political entity will be finished, and who will run the municipal facilities across in Gaza, which were being run by Hamas earlier, there will be no entity there. So, these people will have to move out. This end state has been spoken from 8th of October onwards by people. What will happen to Gaza after this war is finished? Now that Israel has withdrawn 5 brigades out of Gaza, the northern Gaza, there is a withdrawal of the armed forces. IDF is being withdrawn out of Gaza. Who will manage the void that is being created with the public there? And all 2.3 million Gazans have been displaced. They are not staying. Exactly. Everybody has moved to some area or the other. This is a great amount of calamity that's hitting us on our face in future. And, international community also has to get involved. You can't have such a large number of people displaced here. Understandably, in this manner, one tends to support that it's the right of Israel to protect itself from something that can go wrong from Gaza. But then you have to be mindful of also innocent people, mass innocent people. We have seen migrations taking place when we got independent between India and Pakistan, and so much hell had broken loose. And people carry the scars over 75 years. But even now we carry the scars. Right. How would you do this in Gaza?
But dispossession of 2.3 million people, I mean, you can't have a situation like that. And, that is something that a lot of people, at least in the Arab world, fear. Since I'm running out of time, Itai Melchior, I'll quickly come across to you. We'd lost our link with you. A new poll in Israel clearly suggests that just about 15% of Israelis want to see Benjamin Netanyahu continue as Prime Minister once this war is over, and most prefer centrist leader Benny Gantz over him. Of course, Benny Gantz is also in the current war cabinet. How much trouble do you think this spells for Benjamin Netanyahu?
It's a good question that has many ramifications that could fill a whole show in itself. For example, since you are not the only one reading those polls, and also Netanyahu himself, what is he going to do in the short time he has left? If we think that after the main part of the war, there will be election and Gantz will leave the government, and maybe he has to make some quick wins. Where is he going to be looking for that? Is peace with Saudi Arabia in the cards? There are many questions to be asked as ramifications. But as our late President Shimon Peres, also former Prime Minister, once said, polls, he said, are like flowers. You can smell the good smell, but don't eat them or something like that. But the idea is that we are far away from elections. I can't see elections before half a year from now and maybe later. So therefore, yes, it's true. That's the sentiment that everybody feels. There's a lot of anger against the government. Gantz is seen as the hero and the savior, and the fact that he was the opposition leader. He was not the opposition leader, but he was the only leader from opposition that stepped up and entered the government and gave it the unity it needed, gave him many points in the Israeli public. So yes, that is the sentiment now. Will it be the sentiment when we go to the polls one day? Different question.
Who knows? But you're right that right now the focus is on the war, and the same poll suggests that a majority of Israelis do support the Netanyahu government's war effort. On that note, Colonel Myri Eisen, Itai Melchior, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, thank you so much to all three of you for joining me on Global Lens. I look forward to having all of you back on the show. All right, let's now shift our focus to a big story that has emanated from the United States in the last 24 hours, and well, it is linked to the Israel-Hamas war. The beleaguered president of Harvard University has decided to step down after coming under ferocious attacks for her handling of anti-Semitism during protests over the war in Gaza, as well as allegations that she had plagiarized in her academic work. Claudine Gay was criticized in recent months after reports surfaced alleging that she did not properly cite scholarly sources. Gee was also engulfed by scandal after she declined to say unequivocally whether calling for a genocide of Jews violated Harvard's code of conduct. This happened during a testimony before the US Congress alongside the heads of MIT and the University of Pennsylvania last month. Gee, who made history as the first black person to be president of the powerhouse university, has said in her resignation letter that she had been subjected to personal threats and racial animus. Her downfall comes after Harvard's governing body, the Harvard Corporation, had initially backed her after the public relations disaster of the congressional testimony. Subsequently, more than 70 lawmakers, including 2 Democrats, called for her resignation, while a number of high-profile Harvard alumni and donors also called for her departure.
Harvard President Claudine Gay on Tuesday said she would resign from her position, ending a 6-month tenure marred by allegations of plagiarism and backlash over her congressional testimony about anti-Semitism on campus on December 5th.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
At the testimony, Gay and other university presidents were criticized for failing to definitively say that calls for the genocide of Jews constituted bullying and harassment on campus. Gay, the first black president in Harvard's 388-year history, had come under pressure to resign from Harvard's Jewish community and some members of Congress over her comments, while also facing several allegations of plagiarism for her academic work in recent months. In a letter to the Harvard community, Gay said her decision to step down had been difficult beyond words, adding, quote, "After consultation with members of the Harvard Corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than any individual." The Harvard Corporation, the university's 11-member governing body, said in an email to the community that its members had accepted Gay's resignation with sorrow, and that the school's provost and chief academic officer, Alan Garber, would take over as interim president.
Our next story too is from the United States, but it has an India connection. The deaths of a wealthy Indian origin couple and their daughter in the US state of Massachusetts last week have been ruled a murder-suicide by medical authorities after an autopsy. 57-year-old Rakesh Kamal, his 54-year-old wife Tina Kamal and their 18-year-old college-going daughter Ariana Kamal were found dead in their $5 million mansion in Dover, Massachusetts on the 28th of December. A firearm was found near Rakesh Kamal. A press release issued by the medical authorities say autopsy results confirmed that Tina and her daughter Ariana were victims of homicide by gunshot. Rakesh died from a gunshot wound consistent with being self-inflicted. The firearm, though, was not registered in Rakesh's name and he was not licensed to possess it. Last week, authorities had said that the initial investigation indicated the incident was a cause of domestic violence and did not indicate the involvement of outside parties. The family's sprawling mansion, estimated to be worth over $5 million, went into foreclosure a year ago and was sold for $3 million, according to reports. The Kamals purchased the 19,000 square foot estate, which boasts of 11 bedrooms and 14 bathrooms, for $4 million in 2019. The family lived in one of the richest neighborhoods in Massachusetts. Tina and her husband had previously run a now defunct education systems company. The couple appear to have faced financial problems in recent years, according to online records. Their company was launched in 2016 but was dissolved in December 2021. All right, let's now get to our next story from the United Kingdom, and this is quite a first. The police in the UK are investigating the first case of an alleged rape in a virtual reality game after a 16-year-old girl was sexually attacked in the online metaverse. The girl is said to have been left distraught after her avatar, her digital character, was gang raped by online strangers. The teen was wearing a virtual reality headset in an immersive game when she was allegedly raped by a group of men. Though she did not sustain any physical injury, investigating officers say she suffered the same emotional and psychological trauma as someone who has been raped in the real world. This case is believed to be the first virtual sexual offence investigated by the police. An official has been quoted as saying this case poses a number of challenges for law enforcement, given that the current legislation is not set up for this. It remains unclear what game the teenage girl was playing at the time of the alleged offence. The investigation into the landmark case has also prompted questions about whether the police should be pursuing virtual offences, given that the police and the prosecutors are currently struggling with an enormous backlog of actual rape cases. However, UK Home Secretary James Cleverly has defended the virtual reality rape probe, saying the child has gone through sexual trauma. He said, and I quote, "I know it is easy to dismiss this as not being real, but the whole point of these virtual environments is that they are incredibly immersive. It's also worth realizing that somebody who's willing to put a child through a trauma like that digitally may well be someone who could go on to do terrible things in the physical realm." And as we wrap up Global Lens tonight, we have some interesting news for you from Paris. Louis Vuitton, popularly referred to as LV, is one of the first names we can think of when it comes to luxury fashion brands. After creating iconic fashion statements for years, the brand is all set to expand its wings in the world of hospitality. LV plans to transform its current corporate headquarters in Paris into a luxury hotel. Reportedly, the LV hotel will debut at 103 Champs-Élysées in 2026, where Christian Dior had earlier announced their plans to open their headquarters and new superstore. Known globally for its high-end fashion, the LV hotel is expected to have all things luxurious. The hotel is projected to cover almost 6,000 square miles and is said to be located beside Louis Vuitton's largest store in the world. It is said this hotel will be designed to resemble a giant Louis Vuitton briefcase adorned with buckles. Although this will be a first-of-its-kind initiative by the fashion mogul, they have earlier collaborated with various restaurants for food and fashion pop-up experiences in various cities across the globe. Well, for lovers of fashion, luxury and food, this certainly is something to look forward to in 2026. That's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. If you have been, thanks for watching. Do join us again at the same time tomorrow.
Yes, the scale of the attack surprised us.
When you get a series of alerts, 16 intelligence alerts, if Maharashtra government at that time had alerted the Coast Guard and the Navy, this 2611 would not have happened at all.
And one of the details they had planned was to use these dhagas to mislead the investigative agencies.
All this was to be presented as a Hindu terror. So it was a Pakistan operation. The LET was the front end.
As the attacks were on, it was clear that they were planned and launched from Pakistani territory.
For all of those victims of terror that was exported from Pakistan over the years, including but not limited to 2611.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web. Top military intelligence experts break down the web of deception. Colonel Hani Bakshi explains the phenomena of honey trap.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who is making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person.
Colonel Pavitran Rajan decodes the psyche of the victim and the predator.
But when you go up the chain, no one enforces it to people at the top. That disciplinary regime and the security regime is not enforced at the top. And they usually have a public profile where it is much more easier to approach that person.
A News 9 special on how modern technology has added teeth to the ancient spying tactic.
Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत
नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा।
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome to the News 9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News 9 Plus. Here are the top 9 headlines today. The Supreme Court on Wednesday ruled that there was no ground to order an investigation by the SIT or CBI into allegations of market manipulation against the Adani Group. A bench comprising the Chief Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud, Justice Pardiwala and Justice Manoj Mishra rejected the demand for an SIT probe into the allegations against the group and said that the capital market regulator SEBI must conclude its probe within 3 months. The countrywide truckers' strike has been called off as the government assured it would consult stakeholders before implementing a contentious law against hit-and-run accidents. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has skipped the third summons issued by the Enforcement Directorate in connection with the Delhi excise policy case. Since Kejriwal has now ignored the summons 3 times, the ED can now seek a non-bailable warrant against him that can lead the way for an arrest and subsequent court proceedings. The central government is ready with the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 rules and is likely to implement them much before the Lok Sabha elections slated to take place this year, a senior government official told a wire service. The regulations, which were introduced and passed 4 years ago, aim to confer Indian nationality to persecuted non-Muslim migrants who migrated from Bangladesh, Pakistan and Afghanistan and entered India before the 31st of December 2014. December 2023 was the national capital's warmest month in 6 years, with the city not recording a single cold wave day during the month, the Indian Meteorological Department said. The IMD says Delhi is likely to see extreme cold in the next few days. With India reporting 312 cases of COVID subvariant JN1, Union Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia has called for pandemic preparedness and disease surveillance in the country. The All India Institute of Medical Sciences of Delhi issued guidelines for COVID-19 suspected or positive cases that will be reported at hospitals. The toll due to a series of powerful earthquakes in Japan, including one with a magnitude of 7.5, has now risen to 62. Most of the fatalities have been confirmed in Wajima and Suzu on the Noto Peninsula. In West Asia, an Israeli strike has killed a top Hamas leader in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Saleh al-Aruri, the deputy leader of the militant group, was reportedly killed along with his bodyguards. Tel Aviv, however, denied responsibility for the attack. Hundreds of Palestinians in Ramallah and other towns in the West Bank took to the streets to condemn Aruri's killing. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels fired 2 ballistic missiles towards merchant ships traveling in the Red Sea near the strategic Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the US military said, following a report by the British Maritime Security Agency UKMTO. The Houthis, who control the Yemeni capital Sana'a and much of the country's Red Sea coast, have warned they will target ships sailing into the Red Sea that have links to Israel. The Japan Airlines collision at Haneda Airport on the 2nd of January was a miracle. There were 379 passengers and crew on the aircraft when it turned into a fireball after a collision. But miraculously, not one passenger or crew were killed or injured. All of them were evacuated in minutes. And just 5 years ago, an Aeroflot accident in Russia saw a plane burst into flames on landing in Moscow, killing 41 of 73 passengers on board. Now, joining me to discuss this series of accidents and what we can learn from them are civil aviation expert Mark Martin, Mr. Jitendra Bhargav, former ED Air India, and my colleagues Ajit Vijay Kumar and Justin Thomas. Gentlemen, welcome to the News 9 Plus show. Mr. Bhargav, first questions to you. What went through your mind when you saw that JAL aircraft turn into a fireball and just race down the runway?
You know, the first thing that strikes whenever you see an aircraft in such a situation
Yeah.
is what kind of casualties one can expect or what's going to happen.
Right.
But then, if you are an airline person, you know the kind of training that has been imparted to the cabin crew.
Yes.
And it is the cabin crew who turn out to be heroes in such situations.
Right.
You know, whenever we take a flight and the air hostesses give the demonstration as to where are the exit doors,
Yes.
which that lights will lead you to the thing, we'll open the doors and this is how you need to disembark from the aircraft in an emergency situation. So this is what the training is, the immediate revival of refresher kind of a thing to the passengers, and of course the cabin crew who are experienced know exactly what to do. And at times there is simulation done as to what time frame all passengers can be evacuated from an aircraft. And now I tell you, the basic thing is training has held the cabin crew in good stead. Passengers were alert, but the comparison with air float, I wouldn't agree on that, because for the simple reason, what matters also is where the aircraft is, what speed it is on, and where is it going to be grounded. So if you are, for example, landing on an air tarmac in a speed kind of a thing, then the evacuation becomes difficult. You want to wait till the aircraft comes to a grinding halt and then start. But all full credit to the cabin crew of Japan Airlines. They've done an exceedingly good job. And justified the training that an airline imparts to the cabin crew and at considerable expense, and of course the passengers all need to also pray to the Almighty that everything went their way and they were safe.
Right. Mark, this point that Mr. Bhargav mentioned, the fact of the cabin crew being really alert and of course the passengers. Do you want to add to that? You think how important is the training that cabin crew get? How significant is it to avert catastrophe as it was in this case?
Hi Sandeep, thanks for having me today. I think we need to be very clear that while there is a relentless focus on training, there are very few airlines that really do a lot in terms of evacuation simulation training. Now, this the Aeroflot and the S9 Airlines and the TransAsia Russian incidents are really not good examples. The best example would be Asiana San Francisco crash, which happened in 2013-14.
Right.
Now, that's again one of the perfect examples of how alert cabin crew is. But I want to highlight a very important factor here. The level of quality of cabin crew and their ability to evacuate 200 or 300 or 400 passengers calls for a ridiculously high level of mental alertness. And you know, in my experience of having done cabin crew evacuation drills where you incapacitate the person and then the remaining crew doesn't know what to do and they're still trying to wait for an evacuation command. I've seen disasters, but what I've seen on the positive side is more mature airlines and far more mature cabin crew. I'm talking about cabin crew who've been there for 20 years and who've been flying in active service between 35 and 45. Their agility to evacuate an aircraft is far more higher. Now, I think what we saw with the crash, the Japan Airlines crash, the A350 crash it's really not a miracle. That comes from relentless, constant evacuation training, seeing scenarios, seeing experiences. You know, let's go back to Swiss Air 111. Let's go back to Sioux City crash of United Airlines. Let's look at what happened with, you know, the famous US Airways crash on the Hudson. I mean, not only did the crew evacuate everybody, they had enough time to pick up their luggage and their cap and get in the life raft. So the point I'm trying to say here is that this level of capability of training and standard, it sadly does not exist or resonate in India, Sandeep. In India, our training level of standard is very, very low. Possibly the nearest in terms of high training standard I can possibly recall is what maybe Indian Airlines has or had, or Air India has or had. Because we have examples in India where the Airbus A320 crash, the Bangalore crash in
Yes.
1989-90.
89-90, yeah.
The crew nearly evacuated almost 80% of people.
Right,
The ones who perished were the ones who were in the direct line of fire.
Yeah.
When the engine, when the
Yeah.
fuel tanks exploded.
Right.
So, the point I want to raise here, which is I'm a safety guy, and I'm going to talk safety. We need to have holistic and integrated cabin crew training, a center, a facility like how Lufthansa has one, how Air France, or where you simulate smoke in the cockpit, you simulate low visibility water, and once you train people to deal with that panic and anxiety while you're evacuating people. That itself builds a lot of confidence when you're in an actual, God forbid scenario.
Yes.
Now, where we are today, Sandeep, and you know this because you've been in this, you've been covering aviation for a long time. I know when you were in India today. The bigger point in all of this has got to do with, getting out there and looking into some of our private airlines to see the level of effectiveness of that training.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I want to bring in Ajit because Ajit tracks aviation very closely. Ajit, the point that Mark was making, the fact that we need to create this kind of, we focus on the pilots and the simulators and the cockpit, all of that, but we neglect this thing of training cabin crew to evacuate, passengers. And the 90-second rule that we were talking of, how important is this to learn from this and quickly create these kind of simulators to create all those conditions.
Of course, and coming to this particular accident, I think one thing that should be talked about is the Japanese obsession to safety. Right?
Yes.
So not just the airline, and I'm not just talking about airline and training here. The common people there, they are obsessed when it comes to safety. They follow rules.
Yeah.
You have to understand one thing that there were only 12 cabin crews here.
Yeah.
For them to evacuate over 350 people, it has happened only and only because the people there also understand the rules of
they didn't stop to collect their luggage.
Correct. And they did not stop to collect their hand baggage and run off the plane.
Yeah.
That's important. But when it comes to the training part, what was being mentioned by Martin, I think aviation as an industry, if you were to look at it purely from a point of view of being a transport service, right? It is the safest. And it is the safest because there is a whole lot of focus on safety, because when we are flying at 36,000 feet, lot of rules have been set into place, and I think it would be not right, in my opinion, to say that Indian safety standards are way far below than the global standards. Of course, we need to do some bit of catching up, but it's not that our cabin crew is not well trained. And the fact of the matter is that when we are in an aircraft and when we are about to land, I think the cabin crew there is not there to serve you drinks, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They have been trained, and their primary objective there
is to be safety of the passengers.
Yeah, and I don't think so that they can board an aircraft without having been trained adequately. So my view is that it's not that Indian airlines are like kind of ignoring it.
Right. I would ask this question to Mr. Bhargav, but first, Justin, you've been covering aviation as well, and the spate of near misses and accidents that we've seen in the last couple of years. We asked these questions about whether Indian skies are safe or not, but this is one of those positive examples that we can learn from. What do you think what are the lessons that we need to draw from this?
See, a couple of lessons that are straightforward. One is obviously there's the first issue that comes up is the communication. Was a communication failure? Because the latest reports claim that the JAL aircraft was given the authorization to land. That's what they're saying right now. So the question arises, obviously, how come there was a second aircraft there? That's the lesson number one. Second is obviously the one that we've been harping on. Safety is one area which is always evolving, changing, situations changing. You are got to come up with those industry standards that has to be matched up. And aviation being such a body which is crucial, which affects everyone. So, like for example, this crash, Airbus sent a team to Japan to check on why, what happened, what is the condition of their plane. So, the safety is part of this. Thirdly, obviously, the kind of aircraft that we are getting right now. So, these are made of composites right now. Earlier, it wasn't so. Now, the ratio of composites in the newest aircrafts are more. So, now they are trying to see that can it withstand this high level heat of fire. By currently what we have seen is that it hasn't, because the airlines, the crew was able to take out all those passengers out, even though in short time, but they managed to. So the question is again so there are a lot of tests that are going to happen next on those. We are going to learn a lot from those reports, and that's in a way good for the industry itself, because this is a one major fire case that has happened where a very new aircraft has been involved in. So there are quite a few lessons ahead for the industry.
Lessons to learn, indeed. Mr. Bhargav, I was just looking at this Saudi Flight 163 incident in 1980. If you remember, there were 301 passengers that died. They landed safely, the plane caught fire, and the pilot delayed in ordering the evacuation, and all those passengers, they died of smoke inhalation. And here, nearly 40 years, more than 40 years later, you have a case of all the passengers, being safely evacuated. Is it becoming safer to fly now with the passage of time and, lessons like this being learned?
Yes, the airline industry is becoming safer and safer. What happens is that every time a mishap takes place, there is a study undertaken not only by the airline concerned, but even by the aircraft manufacturer. And this is what leads to improvements on what kind of material is to be used, what kind of training is to be given. Like, for example, Ajit made a mention of it. There's a refresher course. It is not a one-time training when a cabin crew is recruited. Every 6 months, they have to undergo refresher course for safety, with including how to come out of the chute and when to open it, all those kind of things are familiar. Then there are exercises even conducted by DEC observers who come on the aircraft to check with cabin crew as to whether they know where the oxygen kept, how will you open the emergency door. And if you recall, when you are on an aircraft, an air hostess comes near the emergency door and checks with the passenger also if he's secure, safe, he is healthy enough to open the emergency door, etc. So, these are regulations that have been in place for a long time, and they are not taken for granted. They are cabin crews refreshed. The announcement is made, of course, as one person very rightly said, passengers' attitude matters most. In India, when there's an emergency, the first thing is to pick up your hand baggage from the overhead cabin and transcript, which shouldn't be done. And I'm sure in the Japan airline case, discipline was very much there with the passengers, and that's why within the limited time frame they could evacuate everyone.
Discipline
but this will again become a lesson for the airline industry, how to go about it. And if they found any lacuna kind of a thing, the one more point that I would like to make is the crew complement that's on a flight. Somebody very rightly said, they are essentially for safety. So the passenger's attitude, we want young cabin crew on board. Well, you must have more experienced cabin crew on board for your own safety and security. Then look for the glamour part of it in the cabin crew.
I'm afraid, Mr. Bhargav, we're totally out of time here, but thank you very much for your views. And my friend Mark Martin, Ajit and Justin, this is a story that we are going to be looking at from the safety point of view, the lessons that India can learn from this fireball where all the passengers made it out miraculously. Lots of lessons here for the booming Indian aviation sector. Thank you very much for joining me.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus.
ahead of the curve.
The scale of the attack was something that we were surprised at. David Hadley was a double agent. The Americans did not want him to be fully exposed, so all that he probably shared with the Americans was not shared with us in terms of intelligence. If we had that, I'm sure that we would have been able to deal with the situation far better.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
There's certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, the US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Nearly 2 billion people in 70 countries across the world will cast their votes this year. It's unprecedented. But what we are discussing today are elections in South Asia. South Asia will see more than 3/4 of that 2 billion population, more than 1.5 billion people going to elections this year. Pakistan, Bangladesh, India and Sri Lanka. Each of these 4 countries have different challenges. Prime Minister Modi, of course, is looking at a 3rd term. Sheikh Hasina is looking for a 4th term. Pakistan, well, it seems that the army has already selected its candidate and is ensuring that no one else spoils the party. And Sri Lanka is just emerging from a period of bankruptcy. Now, joining me to discuss this very interesting alignment of poll stars is General Satish Dua and Professor Sanjay Bhardwaj and my colleague Kartikeya Sharma. Gentlemen, welcome to the News 9 Plus show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep, for having us.
General Dua, when is the last time we saw such an alignment of planets? I mean, it's like 70 countries going to elections simultaneously, almost 2 billion people across the world. We were just talking about it in one of our meetings just a while ago.
I am not a student of political science, but even as a informed citizen, I mean, I think this must be a field day, not a field day, a field year for the cephalogists.
Right.
Because so many elections at one time during 1 year, and today's world is always very interconnected. So elections in one part of the world matter to the other, and I think we are going in for a
absolutely
very different.
And your favorite country, General Dua, is it an election, a selection, a government, or a hybrid government? What are we going to see in Pakistan this year?
Well, all I would say in Pakistan, I think the one sentence answer would be it's perhaps a fixed match. I mean, as we all know.
Fixed match.
On the other hand, there are some wild card entries, which have suddenly been thrown up. And there are some wildcard disappointments, or shall we so that is also fixed. It was known that they would perhaps not be allowed to participate.
Right.
I am not trying to say that these wildcards can upset the fixed match, but they are a statement in itself, number one. And secondly, they also tell you a rising trend of a state within a state.
Right. Interesting. Kartikeya, a fixed match as General Dua called it. What is the match that we are going to see in Bangladesh?
I see this phenomena both in context of South Asia and globally in context of continuity. If we are talking about India, I think Prime Minister Modi is all set to get the third term. So it's a continuity of leadership. Continuity. If we are talking about Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina will win.
Yes.
For whatever reasons they are. But globally, I think in times when we are witnessing 3 open war theaters, you have 3 autocrats in continuous motion, in power. Putin, you have the leader of North Korea, you have Xi Jinping, and they are all 3 powerful persons who are autocrats, and they are there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, which means that they are dealing with different administrations globally, worldwide.
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi is the only Democrat who will be elected for the 3rd time.
Yes.
And I am saying this, he will be elected for the 3rd time. So for India, it will be continuity of a powerful leadership.
Right.
We can add Erdogan in this leadership model.
Yeah.
Again, he is a Democrat but an autocrat.
Right.
He has subverted the democratic process.
Yeah.
Modi is the only Democrat in a democratic system.
Right. Given the fact that he has to fight so hard
he's the only
every
Democrat in
single
the democratic
election.
system.
Yes.
You can blame him for whatever the reasons, but for his politics, but he is the only Democrat. So in this context, I would say the continuity of one leadership globally and at the level of South Asia, which will come from Prime Minister Modi, and at least we will have one person like, for good or bad, Erdogan, Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim, who have at least dealt with multiple administrations globally.
Right.
And secondly, Sheikh Hasina, I think it should be good news for India, because the sort of opposition we have and the acrimonious relationship they share with the Indian interest is really problematic.
Right.
So for me, the continuity of this leadership creates stability, and I am telling you this is adding to the domestic pro-incumbency narrative also.
Right.
Continuity in leadership.
Pro-incumbency. And Kartikeya, as General Dua was saying, that in Pakistan also it's continuity. Let's not forget, the army has continuously been in power there for the last half century, and occasionally they capture power directly, but the rest of the time they're ruling from behind.
You are absolutely right. Pakistan is a hard state, hybrid state, where they continue to change prime ministers, which accrues from their likes or dislikes. But the larger issue for us in context of, as you have defined it, mandate South Asia is, at least, and I feel that this whole SAARC is a very colonial relic. At least we have one leader who has a global stature, and there will be continuity in our political process, foreign policy process, and in our strategic affairs at a time when there are so many challenges.
Uncertainties.
The Premier of Maldives is going to visit China.
Absolutely.
He had visited Turkey. Then we have 3 active borders. We have suspended FMR with Myanmar.
Absolutely.
We have a problem there. We have a the civil war out there. We have a hot border with China.
Yes.
So that way, for me, the continuity part is the foremost and the most important. But yes, globally people can come out with different results. Look at the latest rating for Bibi. It's 15% in Israel. Sunak, he at the bottom of the list in his own party.
Bottom. That's it. Professor Bharadwaj, this point that Kartikeya made about continuity in a sea of global uncertainty, you think that's going to be the dominant trend through these elections in 2024?
No, let me come in South Asia first. See, there are 3 different cases, I would say. If you are coming with Pakistan basically this is a chess game, and wherever the deep states that the establishments wants to put any of the pyada wherever, and they will put it.
Right.
So they brought earlier Nawaz Sharif was there, and then they replaced Nawaz Sharif by Imran Khan, Tehreek-e-Insaf party, and again Nawaz Sharif is becoming the blue eye boy of the army. So they are bringing and they are putting him in that. But here the case in Pakistan, the opposition, particularly Imran Khan and Tehreek-e-Insaf is very popular ways they are having. But because of his popularity, that army and the opposition is not giving him space to contest election. So this is a different story. But in case of Bangladesh, you will see that the opposition is very weak. Very weak because they are out of power for last 15 years. They are having financial crisis, and Khalida Zia is very old, and Tariq Rahman is sitting in London and trying to control the party, and they are not giving enough space to the BNP leaders. So the problem is that because opposition is very weak, the position is very strong because of her policies, her foreign policy, her economic performance, and the way Bangladesh is graduating and to developing countries, the way Bangladesh is performing in socio-economic indicators. So that is one of the strengths that she is coming out again in the elections. She is trying to make it more democratic. 27 political parties are participating, but those parties are, you can say, they do not have much basis except Jatiya Party. This is a different case. Now, if we are coming to India, of course, there are the BJP is now more organized, has a strong line of leadership, have been controlling, and they are also performing globally and domestically on economic and on foreign policy issues. So it's very strong point that Modi is doing well in electoral politics as well. But while you're coming the other states, while you're putting like Xi Jinping and Putin, and then you're coming to Biden, Xi Jinping and Putin, definitely they have been very strongly coming out as a military power, economic power. But while you're coming with Biden has to face a lot of problems because of Ukraine crisis, because of Israel and Hamas conflicts, and the Western countries are not very much happy with this because of the rise of fuel and energy and all resources. So those are different cases. But other South Asian countries, like Sri Lanka and Maldives and Sri Lanka, because of the economic crisis. Maldives, definitely the extra-regional powers are very active. They are cultivating and promoting the anti-Indian forces in Maldives, and they have been successful. But I don't know how much they will sustain it. So these are one thing. Second thing I would like to put before you, that there are two very strong issues are going. One is that the populist politics, that the particular regimes, they are coming with the populist postures, and they are just attracting the voters, particularly the young generations, to vote them, and that is also a trend in all over the world that is happening. Second very important point, that the majority and minority interface has again become a very, very strong point in the democratic politics, where the majoritarian community and society, they are ruling all over the world. And that Americans also fall, they claim that we are the pioneer of the democracy, but they also fall in that trap, and they talk to American first and all that. So they are bringing a majoritarian as well as the populist politics together. So this is very interesting. The developments where you talk, the democracy is where the popular control on decision making and decision makers are there, and there is equality of citizenship, but those factors are not working.
In fact, I want to ask General Dua this, based on what you just mentioned, Professor Bharadwaj. General Dua, Bangladesh goes into the elections in just a few days from now. Now, we would very much want Sheikh Hasina to come back to power. She's good for India. She's been there. She's brought stability to Indo-Bangladesh ties. She's acted on insurgents that were sheltering inside Bangladesh, which is not what we can say about Khalida Zia when she was in power. What is this superpower tussle that's going on in Bangladesh, China versus the United States, and why is the US so pro Begum Khalida Zia? Why are they, so to say, putting the screws on Prime Minister Hasina's party? And India, of course, has been trying to tell the US, listen, don't push Sheikh Hasina into the China camp. Could you explain to us this interesting proxy political battle that's been going on in Bangladesh?
You're right. It seems very surprising as to why US would take such keen interest in a small country like Bangladesh. To my mind, not only in Bangladesh issue, but in several other issues around the globe. While US is cozying up with India in many ways, but in certain ways it also perhaps wants to keep India on a bit of a check.
Right.
Somewhere it wants to put India also on a notice.
Right.
I mean, it's not that, India doesn't get that kind of support that Israel gets from the US, for instance. So here also, because it's a conundrum that's not so easy to understand. I think it's almost like trying to, because India is wholeheartedly backing the present regime, and which has, like you rightly said, has been good for India. Our relations have grown, their economy is growing, everything is going good with this party in power and with the present Prime Minister in power, President in power. So what is, I think to my mind, it is power play with China being played out over here in Bangladesh, but also the fact that it is not in line with the position India takes or the present government takes.
Right. In fact, Kartikeya, this power play that General Dua mentioned, now that's also taking place in Maldives. It's also happening in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has recently told us that we are not going to allow Chinese spy ships to call in for 1 year. And Sri Lanka is also going to the elections. So how important is China in South Asia, and how is
I would
it
say,
grown?
I think that the influence of China is far greater than the United States of America. One, the only problem India has in context of Bangladesh is one, radicalization. Second is the problem for illegal immigration, because it ups the domestic temperature. There are two issues. In context of any other thing, I think we are okay when it comes to Bangladesh. Our problem in context of security is with China. If you look at Bhutan, the entire agenda of Chinese government is to open up an embassy there. You know, if they open up an embassy, the P5 gets the footing there in Bhutan. The sort of the trouble which the Myanmar junta is in, the Chinese hand is very, very evident. Maldives, it's evident. I mean, so I really don't need to get into details of Pakistan. Nepal, it's a challenge. You know, the last time when I went to make a documentary for the News 9 Plus, I saw the entire Darbar Square was not being rebuilt by ASI. The Darbar Square after the earthquake is being built by the Chinese. You know, we were the one who were rebuilding and preserving Angkor Wat in 70s and 80s. That's our expertise. But then you have got Chinese to build that, and they're doing a shoddy job. I saw it myself when shooting that documentary. So my point is that, again, I'll come back to continuity. At least our election for now is throwing up a leader who has seen the politics of at least global South Asia for last 10 years and is going to be in the helms of affair for next 5 years at least, because we are also witnessing a shift in our foreign policy, in our defense doctrine, you know, this calling of the nuclear bluff of Pakistan, or our alignment which started with PV Narasimha in 1991 with Israel.
And General Dua played a very big role in that.
You know, it has become more robust and close with Israel. So, you know, at Jaishankar's interview, you know, I know it's political, but he said, when he says Patel, you know, it reflects a different mindset. It's very evident from the letters of correspondence between Nehru and Sardar Patel in early 50s. So I think that shift will not only be evident or pronounced as we say today, but it will solidify. Like there was a Nehruvian 5 decades, we'll have something of a different sort in coming 10-15 years.
Interesting. And what you mentioned, that calling Pakistan's bluff, and General Dua was, you know, he planned those surgical strikes, cross-border strikes. The first time we actually crossed the line and went and responded to an act of terror by Pakistan. General Dua, how is a new government in Pakistan, in Islamabad, a democratic government, whoever it may be, whether it's Nawaz Sharif or it's a coalition, how is it going to change this policy of ours? Will it continue, or will it be more of the same? Will it be something else that the Pakistanis want, you know, to start talks? What's the state of play right now?
Like I said earlier, it's obviously a fixed match. Like all my co-panelists have also said, Pakistan, in which, and you said yourself, in Pakistan, whether or not army is in power, but army calls the shots, at least as far as important issues are concerned. So to that extent, whoever comes to power, it seems that Nawaz Sharif is set to come to power. The fact that army will remain in a preeminent position is a given. When, be that as it may, and Kashmir is a glue that binds Pakistan. Now we are seeing over the last 4 years that things have improved in Kashmir. Things are moving towards normalcy as far as the people, the populace, the tourists, the day-to-day running of life, the lack of stone pelting, etc. is concerned. So to that extent, things are becoming better and better. But in the last 2 months, we have seen the terrorists are once again trying to reactivate their violence with the security forces.
Right.
And now you see that they're doing it away from the population centers. It's happening in the jungles of Pir Panjal, whether it's on the north face, that is at Kokarnag, Anantnag district, or in the south face on Punch Rajouri. But it's all Pir Panjal, in the mountains and jungles.
Right.
Why? Because the base is in the population is shrinking. Their popular support is shrinking. So that's where Pakistan comes in. Now, Pakistan is a wild card for Kashmir. Pakistan army's raison d'etre remains
is Kashmir.
A problem with India and Indian army in Kashmir. So to that extent, whoever comes to power, Pakistan will continue to keep the pot boiling so that there is no feeling of normalcy in Kashmir. They want to instill fear in the minds of people.
Absolutely.
But before I end, I'd just like to say, seeing there that we are likely to see Prime Minister Modi and Nawaz Sharif on the other side, and Pakistan is in such economic doldrums. So who knows if are they likely to, in the second half of the year, are they likely to strike up a bit of old chemistry? We may not resolve everything, but after all, the ceasefire which is holding for 3 years is something that we can look at, and maybe these two leaders may be able to do something, because Pakistan also needs a helping hand. So they might just reach out.
Thank you.
Let's see where
I'm afraid we're totally out of time, but thank you very much, General Dua. That continuity line that Kartikeya mentioned continues in Pakistan in a different context. But thank you very much. And this is a trend that we're going to be looking at. Thank you, General Dua, Professor Bharadwaj, and my colleague Kartikeya. This is a story that we keep tracking. South Asia, mandate, the world going to elections, headlines for us throughout the year. Thanks for watching.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits
Home missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility demands Kashmiri separatists.
Maqbool Bhatt's release.
Goli maro, or bang.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, yes, I ordered it.
And he never came home.
Stop searching. Start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
This was intended to be a terrorist spectacular without precedent.
The plan was to bomb 2 Air India passenger aircrafts simultaneously.
There was a loud explosion and the whole plane just vanished.
The police dropped the ball, the intelligence officers dropped the ball, and the politicians dropped the ball.
It was a conspiracy that destroyed my life. It destroyed 331 lives.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus. Ahead of the curve.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web. Top military intelligence experts break down the web of deception. Colonel Hani Bakshi explains the phenomena of honey trap.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who is making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person.
Colonel Pavitran Rajan decodes the psyche of the victim and the predator.
But when you go up the chain, no one enforces it to people at the top. That disciplinary regime and the security regime is not enforced at the top. And they usually have a public profile where it is much more easier to approach that person.
A News 9 special on how modern technology has added teeth to the ancient spying tactic.
Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
It's one of the world's largest slum redevelopment projects. The Dharavi redevelopment project aims to turn one of Asia's largest slums into an economic engine in the heart of Mumbai. But what's the politics surrounding the slum redevelopment project? Watch our story Uddhav versus Adani only on the News 9 Plus app. Download and watch.
"73-year-old Parvati Bai Jadhav has been staying at this hut in Dharavi for the last 50 years. Her family of 4 dreams of moving out of their 100 square feet home to a larger and concretized house once Asia's largest slum is redeveloped. But their dream may run into a number of roadblocks.
हा जगातला सगळ्यात मोठा TDR भ्रष्टाचार आहे.
जनता को गुमराह करके धारावी वालों का जमीन लूटने का अगर कोई प्रयास कर रहा है तो वो प्रयास को हम लोग सक्सेस होने नहीं देने वाले.
So it's not that 100% has been given to Adani, and he is the person who is going to bring in the capital which will be required. So give him some breathing space.
He's holding on to the Dharavi redevelopment project. He will invest 25,000 crore rupees to redevelop Asia's largest slum. But why?
Somebody like an Adani would definitely love to take it up and complete it.
Dharavi will be Mumbai's biggest commercial hub after its redevelopment. Adani will be the biggest commercial landholder.
Political parties are opposing the decision to give the contract for redeveloping Dharavi to Adani. The same heat that was seen during the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi meeting held in Mumbai. The Congress party has also joined the same bandwagon.
पोर्ट्स की बात होती है अदानी जी, एयरपोर्ट की बात होती है अदानी जी, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. अच्छा हम सड़क पे चल रहे हैं, मैं पूछूं किसने बनाई? अडानी जी।
इस अडानी में है क्या कि इसको आप सारी संपत्ति दे रहे हो देश की?
But it's only Uddhav Thackeray who wants to steal away the limelight by remaining in focus.
म्हणजे माझ्या माहितीप्रमाणे 100 कोटीच्या वरती स्क्वेअर फूट हा TDR म्हणतोय. 100 कोटीच्या वर. मग यांच्या पिढ्या बसून काही न करता हात न हलवता सुद्धा खात बसतील एवढा TDR तिकडे मिळतोय.
At the root of Uddhav Thackeray's opposition to the Adani Group is the provision of buying transferable development rights after Dharavi's redevelopment. The TDR is the most precious commodity in a landlocked city like Mumbai. Once Dharavi project is over, the other developers will have to buy 40% TDR from Adani. That will run into thousands of crores.
If the government acquires any construction for a project of public utility, the owner is entitled to earn the transferable development right or TDR. The TDR is proportionately linked with the size of his acquired property. Bigger the property, higher the TDR. It allows the developer to build over and above the permissible construction limits as a compensation.
ये केवल 56,000 फैमिली का ही विकास कर रहे हैं. ये गलत है. धारावी में आज 1,15,000 फैमिली है. 1,15,000 लोगों के पास सारे प्रूफ है, सारे कार्ड है, आधार कार्ड है और सरकार ने कट ऑफ लाइन डिक्लेयर किया है. 2011 तक के सारे लोगों को ऑथोराइज माना गया है. इलेक्शन आया है. इलेक्शन के मौके के ऊपर जनता को गुमराह करके धारावी वालों का जमीन लूटने का अगर कोई प्रयास कर रहा है तो वो प्रयास को हम लोग सक्सेस होने नहीं देने वाले. हमें विकास चाहिए, लेकिन हमें कुचल कर कोई विकास हमारा करना चाहता है तो उसके लिए हम लोग सही में रोड के ऊपर आएंगे.
Practically, if you ask me, Dharavi, as we all know, that since 1985, we have been hearing that Dharavi redevelopment would be happening. Dharavi is the center of Mumbai. We say it's South Central. It's a part of the South Central district, which is surrounded with Bandra, Sion, Wadala, Mahe.